young people want life skills to offer when, hunting for jobs. Now, that's the finding of a new report poll by UNICEF. It found that children and young people consider communication, problem solving and teamwork skills as essential to improve their chances of finding work. Now, the United Nations International Youth Day is commemorated annually on the 12th of August to honor and highlight the contributions, endeavours and ideas of young people to empower them as change makers. Now, this year, the theme is Green Skills for Youth towards the sustainability or a sustainable world. For more on this and findings of the poll, I'm joined by Hana Yoshimoto, UNICEF South African Chief of Education, and Keabetswe Ncube, a Genomics Specialist. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Great to have you. I think, maybe let's start with you, Hana. How did this latest UNICEF South Africa report, poll basically shed light on the skills most crucial for young people to enhance their employability?
Well, thanks for having us, first of all. And I think this poll really showed what the demand is really in the labor market, but also the fact that the young people also knows that what's needed is not necessarily just the credentials from universities, from high schools, but also the life skills, what we call either soft skills or social-emotional skills. I personally like to use the word transferable skills, but they are not necessarily something that is easy to put on CV, but these are what's needed for employability and the actual labor market demands.
And maybe then, I want to ask also, what are some of the examples of transferable skills, categorized as life skills? Maybe I can go to you, Dr. Ncube. Maybe if you can hear me, just unmute yourself.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Some of the transferable skills, we are going to focus on the hotspots in agriculture, which are like your farming. And one of the major hotspots is poultry, because it's, you can do it in a small scale and small stock. And this is where the youth can look at things such as your mobile slaughtering facilities, things like hydroponics, because it's sort of your urban farming, and backyard farming. So those are the skills that when the youth doing those kind of farmings in their backyards and at home, even if you can't put that on your CV, but when you go into the agricultural spaces, those are things that are needed, because sometimes we have skills that are on the CV, but then we also, like in the genomic spaces, you want to have something that is on paper, and then you also want to have something that is practical, especially when we look at precision farming, when we look at breeding and genetics, because it's a combination of what has been done on field and some of the computational skills that we put together in order to come up with some solutions. So those are some of the few that I can think of.
And then Hana, of course, maybe just, explain to us the theme of this year and why was it chosen?
So I think it is quite evident that the world is really now shifting toward green skills and the energy transition. And South Africa clearly is not an exception, where the climate change is very much affecting the country. By 2030, we will very much feel the shortage of water in our day-to-day lives. And so it was very important for us to highlight this green and climate change in the theme of the International Youth Day this year. And also just linking to the life skills, when we talk about the need for green skills, this behaviors, values that's needed among the young and children, what we do also need is a life skills to really cultivate and strengthen the skills needed to have a sustainable society in the future.
And then, Dr. Ncube, I think, let's talk about, some of the alarming statistics about young people's skills deficiency, especially in the green economy sector. This was presented in the Net Zero Generation 2020 report. Maybe just, delve into that a little bit for us as well.
Yeah, it is true that we have alarming statistics when coming to those skills in the youth. And if we are going to see where the root is, most of those statistics come in young people after matric. They are mostly in the rural areas because that is where now you don't have accessibility. So yeah, the large numbers are contributed from those areas because there's no accessibility to information. And if there is accessibility to information, the poverty scales are very high. So people don't have, the poverty scales are very high and they can't go to the hubs like in cities where you get to improve your skills. So I think if we want to look at solutions, we should drive them more into the rurals, because I'm not saying that in the cities you don't have those large statistics, but the large numbers come from the rurals because that's where most of the problems are due to lack of information. And if the information is there, if there is going to be implementation, then the people in the youth, there's either no funding for implementation or they don't even know where to start. So yeah, those are some of the contributing factors. Yeah.
And then I think lastly, Hana, maybe just tell us more about some of the sectors that were identified as having the most work opportunities for young people.
So based on the U report, the young people have responded saying that the agricultural industry has the most opportunity, but also just keeping in mind that to create a green economy in the future, it's really not just one sector or the other. There will be demands for some tasks, there will be decreases for others. There will be new occupations and new profiles, qualifications, trainings needed. So I think there's a need for a structural change, which means that there will be changes in all sectors really, but probably a lot of the emphasis is put on agriculture in this country. Immediately. But again, just emphasizing that it affects all sectors.
Yeah, and then I really want to then ask this last question to Dr. Ncube, because I think this is where you also, will be able to tell us more about these green skills that young people also need in order to find jobs and to better themselves.
Yeah, some of the green skills that are needed, we're looking at customer products, green technology, or green types of farms. Like I have mentioned before, that we are now, because some of the young people are not so keen into going into the farm, but we are looking at the modern way that they can do farming. There are current solutions that are being offered and courses in things like your hydroponics, where you can do farming sort of in-house. You're not outside in the garden in the dust. And we're looking at making also agriculture fashionable and nicely packaged to the youth. So they also need technical skills in farms, how to operate the machineries. Those are things that even if they don't have the opportunity to go to university to study, they can go to so many large-scale farms and learn this. There are TVET colleges that offer those kind of courses. Also, coding is one of the major skills that if the youth of today have it, they can transfer it and use it anywhere, because there are apps that are being developed. One of the major challenges in agriculture is access to market. You are there as a young person in a village with a product, and then how do you sell it? If we have more young people who are into the computational and coding sector, they can develop those apps that are going to help push the products from the farms to other people. Things like drones, we have drones that are now being used in farms. Like I've mentioned before, that we're looking at things like precision farming. If you run a large farm, you don't have time to go from plot to plot, like square meter to square meter, to check if there's enough water, irrigation is going well. But we can use technologies like drones to fly around and tell us those statistics. So those are some of the green skills that I can say the youth need of today. And if we tap into that, then we are looking at a more sustainable and brighter future in agriculture for young people.
But then, of course, there is the issue of accessibility to all of these things. What are the challenges, regarding that?
Yeah, so like you're saying, challenges is accessibility. And I feel that there are people in the spaces who have solutions, and we need to have more people who are going to the rural areas. We have to go to the places where the youth are. One of the major problems is that we are so populated and concentrated in cities, where we have people who can easily access all these things. There are people on the ground, people like myself, and then I know there are other people in the agricultural spaces who are there and willing to go to the rural areas to educate the youth. I'm thinking we can even have more innovation hubs. We have innovation hubs, but they are very, very scarce in rural areas. So there can be things like innovation hubs where you take the youth before they can even launch into universities. While someone is still in matric, primary school, they can develop these apps and acquire these skills while they are still in school. So I feel we should move more from the cities and go to where
Thank you so much. I think we are breaking up there a little bit, but thank you so much, Dr. Keabetswe Ncube, Genomics Specialist, and of course, Hana Yoshimoto, UNICEF South Africa Chief of Educations. Just giving us an update there on UNICEF South Africa report poll showing that 23% of respondents to the latest UNICEF poll cited life skills as being the most useful to develop in helping them to find work.